You might know my next guest, Peter DeMarco, is a former Boston Globe reporter, or for the open letter he wrote to the staff at Cambridge Hospital who cared for his dying wife, which the New York Times published back in 2016. In it, he wrote, "Every single one of you treated Laura with such professionalism and kindness and dignity as she lay unconscious." But it was the story behind his wife's death, which DeMarco learned much later and recently shared in a Boston Globe magazine piece, that stunned everyone who read it. The story detailed the numerous emergency response, healthcare system, and individual failures, without which Laura Levis would likely be alive today. We should note at Peter's request he is backstage right now because he doesn't want to hear or see some of the video we're about to show you, but he'll join us in a minute. In his piece, DeMarco told of how Laura walked by herself to Somerville Hospital as an asthma attack was coming on around 4 a.m. on a September morning in 2016. As surveillance video shows, she walked up the hill, found two separate entrances at the hospital. She chose one, but found it was locked. And as her attack worsened, she got within 29 feet of the unlocked door, but could not make it. So she sat down on a bench, called 911, and here's part of that call.
Where is your emergency?
I'm at Somerville Hospital.
I'm sorry, where are you?
Somerville Hospital.
Okay, what's the emergency?
I'm having an asthma attack. I'm dying.
Hey, whereabouts are you at the hospital?
Emergency room.
Okay.
I can't get in.
Laura proceeded to tell the operator that she was in the parking lot. Problem was that her call had been routed to a regional operator at a Mass State Police Center 18 miles away. And when that operator transferred Laura to local police in Somerville, her attack had gotten so bad she could barely speak. At one point, dispatchers sent an ER nurse to look for her, but surveillance video shows that the nurse stepped just outside the locked door and looked out for only 12 seconds before going back inside. And the guards who were typically at the front desk were also not there that day, instead assigned to so-called patient watch inside. Laura lost consciousness as emergency crews searched the area at the bottom of the hill for her. They ultimately found her about 10 minutes after she placed the 911 call, and by the time they did find her, she'd gone into cardiac arrest. 6 days later, Laura Levis, an otherwise healthy, active 34-year-old woman, died of hypoxic brain injury. In the 2 years since, Peter DeMarco considered filing a lawsuit, ultimately decided not to. During that time, the hospital refused to answer questions or to apologize. Yesterday, leadership of the Cambridge Health Alliance, which runs Somerville Hospital, finally agreed to meet with Peter. We invited the hospital to join us today, but they declined. Peter joins me now. Thanks, Peter, for being here. Before we start, let me just tell viewers that I have volunteered as an auctioneer at fundraisers for the Cambridge Health Alliance, and my wife is a union leader who represents the social workers there. Peter, you waited 2 years for this meeting and an apology. Were you satisfied with what you got yesterday?
I think they went pretty far, definitely. They came, they listened to my questions, they tried to answer them as honestly as they could. They seemed empathetic, they seemed conciliatory, they were contrite. They seemed ready to talk more with me. Yeah.
One of the questions the Globe reporter included was you asking Patrick Wardell, who's the CEO of the whole operation, if he shared your perspective that had they not screwed up as they did they agree that your wife would likely be alive? What did they say in response to that? What did he say in response to that?
Yeah. They, at long last, took responsibility for every mistake that they made. There were numerous ones, of course. They did not refute anything that I had in the story that I wrote about Laura. They were sorry.
You know, I asked you on the radio the other day when you were with me and Marjorie Egan, why after you wrote that letter that appeared in the New York Times, it seems like practically everybody in America read and frankly wept over, why didn't they tell you then, by the way, Peter DeMarco, you have the story wrong?
I did ask that question among many questions, and the answer I got was it was a tough one to hear. Mr. Wardell said that he simply thought that I had been told about what happened.
Do you find that credible?
Know. That was a tough one. That was a tough one to believe, I have to admit. But I do believe that he was trying to be honest with me about pretty much everything yesterday as honest as he could.
So why wasn't he honest with you for 2 years?
There wasn't a terrific answer for that. I wish there was. And they did try to be honest yesterday. They did come clean yesterday.
You know, I mentioned in the opening here that Nurse X, who was unnamed in your piece, went outside, spent a grand total of 12 seconds looking for Laura, and went back inside. Has anybody been disciplined here? Do they have any intention of disciplining any individuals? We know about systems, and I know they gave you a 2-page memo talking about some of the changes. We'll get to that in a minute that they've done allegedly to redress some of the errors. Is any person going to pay a price for what happened here, or no?
They have not reprimanded anyone or suspended or fired anyone. They did take the blame upon themselves, the leadership of the hospital, for not having systems in place, not having protocols in place, for letting people down to let this happen. So no, no one's going to be punished per se, and that's where we're at right now. Including
none of that. I mean, you've said several times, which I think is incredibly generous on your part, that they took responsibility for what happened, which obviously is hugely important, and obviously hugely important to you. But take responsibility for behavior that led to the unnecessary death of a woman, your wife. But other than a token $90,000 fine, as you write in your piece, there's a cap on potential liability if a lawsuit were to be filed, $100 grand. So virtually no financial penalty, no discipline of anybody, including themselves, from what it sounds like. Is that acceptable to you?
The whole reason I wrote this story, to publicize Laura's story, was to make sure it wouldn't happen again. Yes, we could talk about punishing these people, and I think it would be better to talk about how to figure out ways that this doesn't happen again to anyone.
So punishment is not important to you. Is that what you're saying? I'm not challenging you, by the way. I'm asking you. I just want to understand. Is that what you're saying?
I am saying that the only thing I can do to move forward is to try to make a difference here. And that's why I shared Laura's story. It's not up to me to punish people. It is up to me to try to make a difference. And Cambridge Health Alliance, they have extended it. They've extended their hand and saying, please, we'll work with you. We made mistakes. We screwed up. We want your help so that we don't make them again, and that we can teach other hospitals not to make them again. I'm trying to look at the most positive way possible out of this.
And by the way, some of the things, I know that I read in the Globe that they gave you a 2-page memo, as I mentioned before, with errors they made. I think errors is their word, and some of the corrections, including, will show a picture of an emergency sign, which incredibly enough did not exist at the time that Laura went there. Cambridge Health Alliance put out a statement. Let me read. We asked, as I said, we invited them. They declined, but they sent us a statement. This is 90% of it. CHA did not meet our own high standards of transparency and accountability with Mr. DeMarco and Ms. Levis's family. It should not have taken an event like this for us to identify and resolve a number of structural training and communications issues. Based on extensive review of the circumstances surrounding Ms. Levis's death, we've begun to make necessary changes. In this instance, we could have done better. We will do better. There are no words to effectively express our sorrow for the loss of Ms. Levis, more importantly for the role we played in compounding her family's grief. We are deeply sorry. You know, again, I admire, and I mean this sincerely, your generosity of spirit after losing someone who you obviously cared about so deeply. And you've said, as they said, that the goal is to not have this happen again. If there was another Laura Levis, and we all hope that doesn't happen, who approaches a door, and there's no Globe story written by her husband, there's no NBC story by Lester Holt, there's no commitment by her husband to not file a lawsuit, do you think they would voluntarily be transparent and open and share all of their information with the people who love that woman?
It's a great question. It did take all this time. It did take all those factors to reach this point. So, and that is disappointing, of course. And it's what I've done, I think, with writing this story is also to speak for a lot of other families out there who our laws don't allow really any sense of legal justice because of these caps, because there's a $100,000 cap. You can't really sue. Or you'd spend more money suing than you'd get a verdict.
Right. And you said State Senator Pat Allen, also from Somerville, is contemplating filing some litigation. Did they offer yesterday to voluntarily waive the cap and make a contribution to her survivors, to the foundation in her name? Did they make any of that kind of offer?
They did not do that yesterday, no.
Which they are free to do. Obviously, they can voluntarily, I assume, pay whatever they want despite the cap. Could they not?
They could have made an offer. I'm not sure how I would have responded, but I haven't been about the money. I've been about trying to make a difference with Laura's life. That's the best I can do right now. The system doesn't allow anyone in my position to seek justice or to seek reparation through a verdict.
But if someone doesn't have your skills and the resourcefulness of you and her family, who relentlessly pursued the facts here through freedom of information, through research, they may not do as well.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's why there should be some changes.
A couple of very quick things, Peter, before you go. You said, the Globe story says you left with some disappointment in their answers and still some questions. What's at the top of that list of either disappointment or unanswered questions?
Yeah. They were not able to answer all my questions. I think we need to meet again.
Which they said they're willing to do.
Yeah,
by the way.
this was not a one and done. They made it willing. They need to do a little more research on their end. They need to help me understand some more things, and by doing that, maybe we can come up with some better solutions too. They've made a real willingness to do that, and I hope that they fulfill that promise.
Before you go, in just 1 minute, if you would, we've all learned, those of us who do not know Laura, unfortunately, know every detail about how she died, but we know very little about how she lived. Can you spend the last minute talking about her life, if you would?
Do we just have 1 minute? Yeah.
Well, we can start with that.
Yeah. Laura was this bubbly, spunky, smart, intelligent woman who loved every minute of life. Let's do this. Let's go there. Let's cook this dinner. Let's go to this restaurant. She just there wasn't a day she didn't want to have fun or connect with people. She was strong. She was funny. She was my best friend, and I miss her so much.
Well, you've done great work, and I hope you continue to make progress. Peter DeMarco, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. If you want to find out more about Laura's life and the legacy she leaves behind, please visit the site on your screen. It's Lift for Laura. That's the number 4.org.